First of all, thanks for taking a few moments with me, with the members. This is always about talking to the members and others that they share with. But, a lot of people don't know Ryan Bradley. Ryan, thank you again. But a lot of people do know you, and maybe we want them to know a little bit more about you. So you've been involved on a number of levels with CCNG members at the regional level, at the national level, at the executive level. And again, you are always able to make an impact, have an opinion, help someone. And for those many, many years that you've done that, first of all, thank you for all of that. We really appreciate it. But let's start with your background. Tell a little bit, give us a little bit about, your call center leadership skills and how you got to where you are.
Well, thank you for having me, David. It's a real honor to have a couple minutes with you today. Hard to believe this is my 26th year professionally doing these types of things. I tell everyone I never thought I would end up in contact centers professionally. I was a history major in college, just trying to figure it out. So I started off my career as a claims representative, frontline dealing with customers in the insurance industry, and worked my way up. I took a big risk almost 20 years ago, and I moved to Oklahoma City to work in contact center finance for Farmers Insurance. So I learned the financial and the reporting pieces before I learned the contact center side of the house, which is sort of a different way of learning contact centers. I eventually worked my way up to be the leader of the contact centers there, and I've had the privilege of working for a couple different Fortune 500 companies the past couple of years, and most recently served as the head of contact centers for one of the largest commercial insurers in North America. CCNG is an amazing organization. So many great networking opportunities, but there's so much knowledge and networking opportunities out there. It's truly just an amazing tool for me as a senior leader in the customer experience space to have that and to be successful there.
Today, you wanted to talk a little bit about, evaluating the contact center operations from performance disciplines. And I want you to explain at a high level what you mean by that.
So when you think about your organization, there are different specialties within your organization. You have an HR department, you have the accounting department, you have the sales team, you have marketing, you have a contact center operation or your customer experience delivery group. And within that, there are specific sub-disciplines within your contact center customer experience discipline area: QA, training, workforce management, your IVR, your telephony, your CRM, the BPO space, knowledge management, all these different things within contact centers, hiring and recruiting, that are so critical to be successful as a leader at all levels, to not just have a little bit of knowledge in all those areas, but to create some expertise there. Typically in contact centers, you have somebody who's an expert in all those disciplines. Within that, you have a workforce manager, you have a QA specialist, you have someone focused on training, et cetera, throughout that. So for you as a leader, how do you know what to worry about? Because you have these experts on your team, you're focused on that, you presume you hire great people. How do you know you're doing a great job? How do you know you're in a high performing organization and yet your team is delivering the best quality product, whether it's in the quality team, the training, the frontline leadership team, your middle level leadership team, and then all those technology connections that come along with managing a contact center. So you have this, I like to say, this multiplicity of things to deal with as a senior leader. And for everybody in the organization, learning them as part of your development of being diverse in your knowledge of all those different disciplines within a contact center takes time. So I wanted to talk about that today. And so how do you build up those competencies? How do you understand how good are you? And how do you know when you need help and when you don't?
That all means one thing with a 30-person contact center, because some of those disciplines are well, you're no longer playing knowledge manager right now. We need you to play HR, so you wear multiple hats. Others, and I think of public utility out in Arizona, where they rotate the manager through all of those departments to gain that knowledge or at least perspective. Can you give some examples of some of the things that you've tried, maybe on the smaller scale as well as the larger scale?
Yeah, so from a larger scale standpoint, I've had an opportunity to work with the big 5 consulting firms over the years and have engagements with them and help us focus on multiple disciplines at any time. I think the important thing I would share at a large scale is you don't need a large consulting partnership to move the bar from all of your skill sets from a large contact center. I think a lot of people say, oh, we're a big call center. We need to hire a consultant to help us move the bar from a logistics or technology or from a people standpoint. There's lots of other different ways to approach solutions out there. Talk to vendors. There's always someone out there who's a specialist in a specific area of your business. Be a sponge, learn from them. They usually, when you talk to vendors in those spaces around an area of these disciplines or the discipline within your contact center, they have tons of knowledge. And the top people out there in the vendor or delivery space who call centers partner with, if they're not good at it, they're going to tell you who would be a good partner in that space as well. You also have to think in that space as well, from a large standpoint, is large isn't actually smooth, and smooth isn't actually a great solution. And you can throw a lot of money at a problem and it may not actually solve the problem for you because A, it might not be a cultural fit, and then B, your leadership team and your frontline employees may not use it. So you have to think about that. Sometimes it's a square peg, round hole problem that you're solving in a big contact center type of solution.
When you're running a smaller operation, it's easy to fall back on, yeah, we just don't have the budget. And if we were only a larger organization, we'd have the budget, therefore we'd have the problem solved. Not always a direct path.
That's exactly right.
Right. Give us a little bit of impact on maybe when you've been in a smaller environment, some of the things you've done.
Yeah, so when you think about in a smaller environment, smaller contact centers with limited amount of resources, budgets sometimes hard to come by, the approach from a disciplines is really what is your focus? What's your culture in your organization that you can be that solution, that frontline brand to your customers, your business partners from your contact center? You're literally the face of the company to every single customer every day. So that cultural alignment is so critically important with your brand. So once you align that, that's going to tell you where to focus your effort. Should it be in a quality and experience delivery? Should it be in the DIY, the digital space from a self-service standpoint? Should it be in the chat arena versus a traditional contact center business model? So first you have the cultural piece, and then you have the resource piece. And so how do you make the decision based upon the culture, A, and then the resources, how do you stretch more? And how do you stretch them across, those areas of focus? A good example that I recently dealt with was around employee engagement. That's one of those disciplines within a contact center I'm going to talk about a little later this week. And we built a recognition and reward program, but the frontline leadership team never used it. And so we built a great tool. We thought it was best in class tool, but it really wasn't culturally aligned to the values of the team. We were more focused on the technical relationships with our customers rather than the brand and the experience delivery. And so we had a reward program that's focused on branding and experience, but our culture was focused on technical issues and more of a help desk type of solution for our customers. And so we struggle with that. That's a mistake that we made from an employee engagement standpoint. Is that
it's the first time I've heard you describe, start with the culture, work towards the technology. I think that's brilliant because all too often we hear about, well, the tool is the solution. So you just plug the tool in and everything is fixed. And then lo and behold, it didn't get fixed. Can you give us another example of where, in general sense, where the culture discussion kind of drove to a technology or a process change decision?
I work for an organization and quite the opposite of the example that I just described, where they had a very strong technical discipline. Their employees were very tenured. They had less than 5% turnover a year, and they're about 300 rep center. And they made investments in surveying customers and employees at the same time. And when they made those investments, they had a very strong culture around long-term commitment to the company, long-term commitment to their customers. Their customers had average tenure of 35 years with their company. So some very long tenured customers. And so they needed to build the culture around delivery and customer experience. And so they needed to develop a quality discipline from the ground up at customer experience. They had no surveys. They didn't listen to phone calls. And so once we made that culture, we had the people's commitment, but once we started sharing examples and providing feedback to employees, we moved the bar very quickly from an NPS and an OSAT standpoint, so that we created sort of a monster, which is sort of the bad news here. And it's sort of that principle of customer elasticity. If you create a very healthy experience, people are going to come back for more. And so we literally doubled the size of our contact center operations in 3 years, because we started delivering high quality experiences that people started calling us, and rather than trying to figure out on their own. And so we didn't realize there was this appetite to engage with our organization, and to go from 150, 200 employee center to over 350, closer to 400 by the time I left. That was a big shock. You had the technical competency and the success story, but once you change sort of people's mindsets around that, it really drove a lot of more experiences with the company.
Great story. So you changed the purpose, if you will,
Yeah.
and that drove decisions to expand people, process, technology. All too often we hear, if you put in the solution, then you will expand your customer interaction. Not if the customers don't want to interact. So you created that need, that desire to interact, which drove everything else.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people worry they go right to the solution and not to the team who's delivering and the culture pieces first. But I think there's a lot more to learn from a professional standpoint around how to solution. There's plenty of solutions out there, but how do you get to that bridge? And I think, that's the area I always like to talk about. I think, as a contact center leader, to be successful in the space, you got to be inherently curious, and you always have to be constantly learning and trying new things. I think sometimes people think about the solution first, and rather than think about how to solution, because there's so many different solutions out there from a vendor space, from the technology, or from a consulting arena. Think about what is the outcome that we want to achieve prior to engaging that. But there's also a learning component. I think for us as contact center leaders, we have to be inherently curious about what we do. And we also have to be constantly learning, because the business is changing just so dramatically, particularly the last 3 years. It's only going to increase the next 2 to 4 years. Things that I try to do just to stay informed, but also be curious in my space is, I try to talk to vendors all the time, whether they're in the technology space or business process solutions. I try to be a sponge with them to try to find and just learn what they're doing, and just see how that might be able to help me. I also like to go to conferences. There's always lots of consultants and vendors and people, freelancers out there. There's always a dialogue to be had, and you have to be inherently curious as to what's out there and what's the changing game. You think about what's happening right now in natural language, a lot of revolutionary technology now affordable to all call centers that wasn't available 3 years ago. That's a big change that's out there. I also recommend contact center technology user conferences as well. They all have those annually. I think they're a great resource, not just from learning more about the technology that you have, but from a networking standpoint, where you can steal ideas from peers at other companies who are probably using the technology better than you are. And last but not least, just CCNG. I think as you're solutioning and you're thinking about how do you evolve your business, you need to have engagements like this. You need to have, I like to say, someone to bounce ideas off of. And there's always somebody doing something better than you are. And there's tons of resources to find people like that here at CCNG. But there's just a couple ideas that I would throw out there.
Here we are sitting in the front of the Delta variant. We've all been work from home. Most of our contact center colleagues have a significant percentage of the workforce working from home. Most of the discussion, as you mentioned, you're going to be talking employee engagement, but most of that centers with an eye to someone in the office as well as not in the office. What do you see us dealing with? Where do the changes and challenges come from over the course of the next year as it relates to leading in the contact center?
Yeah, so this return to office situation is going to be resolved in the next 6 to 9 months in the contact center space. If an organization hasn't made that decision, they're going to have to make that decision. From an employee retention standpoint, I think you have to offer choices at this point, whether it's fully remote, partially in the office, fully in the office. I think to be an employer of choice, you have to offer that. The other thing this whole COVID mess really brought home to most employers, but I think employees as well, is the critical importance of work-life balance and how important it is to have good mental health with your employees, make sure that people are taking vacations, make sure that folks are pulling away from what they do every day. That really resonated with me. And I'll share with you what I've been doing recently with my staff is we've had an email truce. So every Friday at noon, we stop sending email to each other and we agree we're not going to send any more email until 8 a.m. on Monday and try to lead by example as our leadership team.
That's a fantastic idea and a great way to wrap this up. Give him a nice little tidbit to walk away with. Ryan, thank you again for everything you've done over the years and the things that you will do. You are someone who is living the leadership role. You're just open to having a conversation with anyone. So to those who are viewing, don't be bashful about connecting with Ryan on LinkedIn or some other platform. If you're in the member network, you can reach Ryan on Slack or contact us. We'll actually make a direct connect, no problem. Thanks for taking time with us today, Ryan. Great job. And I'm looking forward to Town Hall this week as well.
See you later, David. Thanks for the time and the opportunity.